plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines at 7 o'clock. A man has been arrested following a fatal stabbing in South London. Police were called this morning to reports of a number of people stabbed in Woolworth. 3 people were found with injuries and 1 man sadly died at the scene. Inquiries are underway to confirm his identity and inform his family. A man in his 60s was arrested at the scene and taken into police custody. The incident is not being treated as terrorism. The nation has fallen silent as the King led a 2-minute silence to mark Remembrance Sunday and honour fallen soldiers at 11 o'clock this morning. Big Ben chimed 11 times and the last post was played before King Charles, dressed in his Royal Navy uniform of the Admiral of the Fleet, laid a wreath at the cenotaph. He was joined by members of the royal family, including the Prince and Princess of Wales. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, both laid wreaths. They were also joined by former Prime Ministers. Today is also the first time since the start of the year that the Princess of Wales, who is recovering from cancer, is carrying out 2 consecutive days of public official engagements. 10,000 veterans have marched past the cenotaph as part of the Royal British Legion's parade. To the US now, where overnight Joe Biden is reportedly set to make a personal plea to Donald Trump about the importance of funding Ukraine. It's understood the outgoing president will urge Trump not to walk away from Ukraine when the pair meet in the Oval Office on Wednesday. Elsewhere, Israel's Prime Minister says he and Donald Trump see eye to eye on Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu said he has spoken to the US president-elect 3 times since the election. And sticking to US politics, this morning, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, has said that it is probably unlikely that the government will work with Nigel Farage as an intermediary to the Trump administration, adding that Mr Farage should focus on working with his constituents in Clacton as opposed to being a transatlantic commentator. And dozens of pro-Palestinian demonstrators have been detained by police in Amsterdam after ignoring a ban on public protests in the Dutch capital. Hundreds of demonstrators defied the ban to gather in the Dutch capital's Dam Square, chanting demands for an end to violence in Gaza and free Palestine. But police moved in, instructing protesters to leave, and several people were dragged away. The 3-day ban was imposed by the court from Friday after Israeli football fans were targeted in so-called hit-and-run attacks on Thursday night. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Anti-Semitic attacks in the Netherlands. Jamie Oliver apologises to Australia. And Donald Trump trounces Kamala Harris. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. And coming up on the show tonight, Jews attacked on the streets of Europe. It's not the 1930s, so is anti-Semitism still on the rise on the continent? I'm going to be speaking to Harry Saul Markham about that. And what will Donald Trump's second term as US president mean for the future of America? Roger Giwab and Matthew Stadlen will be here to debate. And is literary freedom being eroded on university campuses? I'm going to be speaking to the author, Lionel Shriver. And, of course, myself and my wonderful panel will be here answering questions from this delightful studio audience. And my comedian guests this evening are Bruce Devlin and Paul Cox. Bruce, you've had an exciting... You went to see the opening night of the Steps musical.
I did, Here and Now. It was a very pivotal moment. It's called Here and Now.
So profound.
Yes.
I always knew they were.
But they are. Look at you just punching down.
No,
do you know why?
I'm
because you're
sincere.
jealous.
Well, I am slightly jealous, but I can do all the moves.
Can you?
Yeah, I can pretty much.
I will challenge you.
OK, fine.
During the break.
Was it good, though?
It was wonderful, and I don't like musicals. That's one part of the stereotype I don't fit.
That does surprise me.
Yeah, no, I've never seen The Sound of Music.
What?
I know.
It's just a bunch of kids dressed in curtains and then they fight them.
That's not aimed at me.
OK.
No, I think that's...
I didn't understand any of that, guys.
Right. You're not a musical theatre?
A cultural experience.
Let's talk about footy like a lad.
Mate.
Have you had a good week?
I've had a half-decent week.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just about recovered from staying up all night to watch the Trump election.
Did you do that?
I did. I didn't plan to. I thought, I'll wait till 2 or 3, perhaps North Carolina will come in, Pennsylvania will come in, but then I just stayed up all night.
It is addictive, isn't it?
It was, and Lewis Schaefer was doing top-level political commentary for the GBNews.
Yeah.
And there was something to behold.
I'm sure it was. I mean, he wouldn't have been my choice, but anyway, let's move on. Let's get some questions from the audience. We've got a question from Abdi. Abdi, welcome back.
Hello, hi. Good evening. It's as you expect, it's about Trump and looking to the emotional meltdown of people. The question for me is that why was it so surprising that Trump won?
Well, did you expect him to win?
Yeah.
You did? You had no doubt in your mind?
No.
I actually expected Harris to win, and I thought, because all of the polls were very, very close, it wasn't a knife edge, and so I assumed... And also, I always predict these things wrong. I got Brexit wrong. Well, actually, that's about it. But, I thought this was going to be wrong,
Do you know who did get it right?
Go on.
Mu Ding.
Who's that?
Mu Ding is it's a pygmy hippopotamus.
Oh.
And, it's true. Listen, if you want the real facts, come to me.
Where is this hippopotamus based?
Thailand, but we've got one in Edinburgh now. We've got Hamish.
Ah.
So I'm going to go next week.
Is this like that monkey that was predicting the Euro results?
Well, it's funny because the woman that reads the asparagus on This Morning, it's true. She got it correct about Kamala standing, but didn't think that Kamala was going to win. And then Mu Ding and her mum had 2 fruit baskets, and Mu Ding ate the Trumpy one.
Yeah. OK, well, let's move away from the pygmy hippopotamus.
Why? She's allowed to vote.
And let's move on to a bit of politics. Although, really, they're not that much different. It has been a silly campaign in many ways, with everyone calling each other fascists and Nazis and, just histrionics. Brat. No one knows what brat means, but that was a big feature of the election. Were you surprised that Kamala Harris was so roundly trounced, I think is the phrase?
I think, OK, So I was slightly surprised that she was so well beaten.
Because he's got the Senate, he's got the House.
And the popular vote.
However,
that as an outcome is best for everybody, whichever side of politics you're on. The fact that because if
you hate Trump.
No, well, maybe there are people out there. I've noticed there are a few people who don't like it.
Yeah, I've seen that as well.
But what I mean is, it's so decisive that it can't be fought over.
That's true, Bruce. That was one of my worries as well, that it was going to be so close that people were going to be contesting this forever. But
that's a bit like Scottish independence is slightly different, but, there was at least a clear majority in favour of no, because if it was 1 or 2 votes then...
But that might be why there have been fewer meltdowns than I expected. I mean, Abdi talked about... there are some crazy kids on TikTok screaming and doing all the rest of it. That's just what you'd expect. But not as many as you'd think. And there certainly hasn't been any civil disobedience or disturbance. I think people accept accept this.
I think, worryingly, most of the breakdown has been amongst top-tier left-leaning media outputs.
Yes.
So the people that they get to commentate, the serious adults of the media are the ones having the breakdown and saying the most abhorrent things.
I've seen people like Joy Reid on MSNBC talking about how racist and sexist. I don't think calling people racist and sexist works anymore. I think this election sort of proves that, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. I think, it's been proved for many years, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's been a trope that they've thrown at Trump, and it's never really stood. The insurrection on the 6th of January was the only thing they could really hold against him, OK?
They're not really focusing on that, though.
No.
They're blaming voters, and they're talking about particularly ethnic minority voters who've a massive swing towards Trump. I think it's 1 in 3 black voters for Trump. And people saying, you know, this is a problem now, and they're sort of verging on a weird kind of patronising racism.
Well, it is racism, isn't it? It's saying that black people should think this, and they don't. 90% of black women voted for Kamala, which is a surprise. But there must be... what they keep forgetting is there's 10% of black women out there that have been turned on by Trump.
I think I think what they forget is that we're all individuals. We're not demographics. We are people.
No,
that's...
No, exactly.
Although there have been a lot of celebrities who have lost the plot. Madonna actually ate a bit of a cake. No, it's true. She did it on Instagram. She said, I'm so upset, I've eaten this cake. No, that's not her. That's not her.
But she hasn't eaten a cake since 1984.
No, absolutely not. No, she's too busy.
And do you remember in the COVID crisis, she was in that...
In the bath.
In the bath, talking about the nature of mortality.
Yeah, and that COVID was a leveller, and you're like, yeah, if you're a billionaire, OK, that's fine.
An impromptu version of Vogue that was absolutely terrible. I think it was about fish or something.
So apparently she's on a lot of strong medications and she fell at the Brits. That's what my insiders tell me.
OK.
It was the buzz of Steps last night.
OK, well, we'll come back to the Steps musical. Okay. I want to hear more about that.
Good.
Not really. Let's move on to another question now. This one comes from David. David. Hi.
Thank you very much. My question is also about a clash across the pond, and that was on CNN News, where a commentator, Jay Michelson, who's apparently quite a noted polemicist, got into a real wrangle with another commentator about transgender kids, boys playing in girls' games, girls playing in boys' games.
Yes.
And the whole thing erupted. The panel may know a bit more of the detail, but it apparently was a very serious clash in American culture.
It's funny you say that, David, because I've got a clip of that, which we can have a look at. Can we have a look at that clip? Let's go.
There are a lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt. That's not how it is. They're not boys. They're not boys. They're not playing girls' softball. I'm not going to sit there and listen to that.
Let's reset for a second, because, look.
I think what's so interesting about that is, you know, obviously Jay Michelson has his passionately held beliefs. He believes that being a man or being a woman is a matter of identity, not a matter of biology. And, of course, the other speaker in that clip, I'm not familiar with him, but he clearly feels that being a man or a woman is a matter of biology rather than identity. And his view is actually the view of 98% of the world's population. So it's interesting, though, isn't it, Paul, that Jay Michelson's approach is to shout him down, to say, I'm not going to listen. Might that be because if he listened, he might have to admit he was wrong?
I find this out. The psychology of it now fascinates me.
Yeah.
There's a psychologist, Dr. Eric Byrne, who created this way to understand people's behaviour, and he puts people into 3 characteristics when they're behaving: adult, parent and child. And what we're seeing more and more with the left is they occupy the child and sometimes the parent space, because they believe what they're doing is looking after the child's community.
That is a childish response and potentially a parent patronising response.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a combination.
But there's no adult in there whatsoever, because adult would say that there's 2 genders. Adult would say, listen to the other commentator. The other commentator speaks for a massive amount of people. He's trying to make his point. If you don't listen and you remain in that child's space, you will never listen. And the trouble is that child's space is being validated by the people that believe him.
I don't mind him holding a minority opinion. I know it's a very high-status opinion, but it's still very much the minority opinion. And I don't mind him being passionate about it and disagreeing.
No.
But my point is, he should be open to the discussion. That's what scares me about that, Bruce, is the idea that I'm just going to shout at you till you shut up.
If you think about, you mentioned TikTok and things earlier, and that's all that people are doing now is screaming on TikTok, and people think that that's the way to make a point. I would like to point out that when I was in nursery, I wore a dress.
Did you?
Yeah.
And I'm sure...
And I didn't harm anyone, including me.
Well, quite.
I think I even did a Games Day in a dress.
And that is that's the point that a lot of the gender-critical individuals are making, is that it doesn't matter what kids wear.
No.
Boys can wear dresses, girls can wear trousers. It doesn't matter.
No.
What we shouldn't be doing is medicalising them because they don't fit into stereotypical roles.
But the thing is, I agree with you, we catch more flies with honey, as it were, so why not allow people to debate issues?
We need to have the debate, exactly. I mean, but that clip is interesting because I think it just summarises, well, it's two things. It summarises this whole debate, what's been going on, is that one side has been screaming and shouting and threatening violence, and the other side has been trying to have the conversation. And you know, and it also shows that they're not learning from the results of that election. They think that being histrionic and shouting is still going to get you
I
away.
think it's now beyond a point of return for many people because they believe it. You know, let's not misunderstand. They absolutely believe it, and to be challenged on it and therefore have their view changed would be to challenge everything they believe in.
I do wonder what would happen if he would sit down with a young girl who has been injured by playing against a boy and see if he could still retain that position.
My hunch would be that he'd make himself the victim in that, and he would say that the real victim is wrong. He would also try and convince the real victim that they've got it wrong and they need to see it from the boy's perspective.
Let's be fair to him, he's not here, but, you know... By the way, Jay, if you're watching, come on the show. You can shout at me. Let's move on to another question now. Who's this from? This one is coming from Nigel. Do we have a Nigel anywhere?
Yeah, that's me.
Hi, Nigel.
Yeah.
Just pass the microphone to Nigel. What's your question?
Should Jamie Oliver have cancelled his book because it referenced Indigenous Australians?
Yeah, he's written a children's book. Have you read the book?
No, I just saw the thing in the paper today.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a fascinating one. Jamie Oliver's strayed into children's fiction. Well, anyone can do it, you know. Fergie did Budgie the Helicopter.
That's true, actually.
Anyone can. And he's written a book, and one of the characters in it is a First Nations Aboriginal Australian character who has, I think, boasts about having some sort of magical telepathic powers.
In foster care as well, perhaps? Well,
perhaps.
Yeah.
And basically people have said, you should have run this by the people it concerns. You should have run this by Indigenous people in Australia because this is offensive, it's disgusting. People have been calling for the book to be withdrawn and pulped. I mean, my solution to this would be, firstly, it's fiction, so calm down. Secondly, it's written by Jamie Oliver. Doesn't anyone take you seriously? And also, if you don't like the idea of the book, don't buy the book, and the problem is solved. You see, because I don't know if you know this, but when people write fiction, they make stuff up.
Yeah, I know.
And so it doesn't really matter. I mean, what do you make about this? I mean, I do, by the way, think he should do his research properly. On the other hand, I did Google this, and there's lots of websites about First Nations telepathy and magic and traditions of this kind. So that's not made up.
Here's what happened, because Jamie Oliver didn't write all that book himself, and he would have been under pressure from his publisher.
Do you know that for a fact?
I don't know that for a fact.
You're just assuming.
So I make a lot of things up and say them confidently, and then the audience believe me.
OK. Well, let's just say he might have had a ghostwriter, he might not. Anyway, continue.
So my hunch, therefore, is that this publisher said, you need to include someone of minority background, maybe Indigenous background, and we suggest that it takes the shape of this. And he now is in the position, because he would have just gone, yeah, whatever. How much am I going to make? Well, that gets rid of the turkey twizzlers, or whatever his aim was. And he's now having to defend something he probably didn't make the decision on. And the decision would have been made purely for ideological identity politics reasons. And I'm surprised that why do they care? It's like, do tall people get upset because of the BFG?
Well, look, there are...
Yes, ask Gary Barlow's son.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, look, I've read books that have depictions of people of my kind that are not very flattering, but I don't cry about it.
Unpleasant people.
No, Sagittarians.
All right, same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what we're missing here is the book was written by an air fryer.
Yeah, that's
and that hasn't got out, so, you know.
But Bruce, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, he should be free to write whatever he wants. Within the publishing industry, particularly within children's publishing, they have these things called sensitivity readers, which is effectively you give your manuscript to, basically, I suppose, Mary Whitehouse, but a bit younger, and she will say, no, you can't say this, and no, this is going to be offensive, and that's going to be offensive, and then you have to go away and rewrite it, and it's very boring and tedious. I do think people should do their research properly, but on the other hand, I think the correct response to this would be to criticise the depiction. Give it a bad review. Don't say it should be pulped. because people are being harmed. They're all using this word, harmed. It's not safe. It's like, get a grip.
Well, we were talking about that earlier before the show, and someone that we both know won't have anything to do with porno because they don't, quote-unquote, feel safe around you. Now, I've been around you in all sorts of conditions. You're fine.
By the way, can we put some context on that?
No. Let's leave that hanging. Because my mind is going to all sorts of dark and seedy...
No, but I'm just saying, that it's like what you were talking about stuff earlier, which I've now forgotten, but it's when you overuse words incorrectly, then you take away the meaning from them. So how can you be harmed by a mouldy old book?
Well, you absolutely can't. Let's move on to a quick question from Michelle. Michelle. Hello, where is Michelle? Oh. A microphone is being passed along as we speak. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, good evening. My question is, do you think it's acceptable for relief workers to ask people who they voted for before they help them?
Michelle, are you from that part of the world, from America?
Yes, I am.
Detected the accent. Now, this is FEMA, so the relief workers in America during the hurricanes. And it's been revealed, this isn't a lie, that a particular supervisor had sent an instruction to the rescue workers saying, just ignore any houses that have a Trump sign outside. And it hasn't been denied, it's been confirmed, but FEMA have said, obviously it's outrageous and we'll deal with it's a rogue individual within FEMA. What does it say to you, though, Michelle, that this happened? What do you think of that?
It just shows there's a lot of bias going on and people are taking sides when they shouldn't be.
Even when it comes to natural disasters, human beings, why should it matter how someone votes? I mean, I don't understand that. I don't want to blame you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it shouldn't matter, and they should have helped them regardless.
Yeah, well, of course. Bruce, what do you think of this?
I do blame you.
You are representative of America.
Absolutely, generally. I'm appalled. More of that after the break. Yeah, it's outrageous. It's a bit like that meme after the Brexit vote, and it was a care worker in an old folks' home, and they wouldn't give them the medication because they'd vote, and you're just like... Really? Okay.
I just don't know. What do you make of this? Very quickly, Paul, what do you think?
Well, very strongly, I think it's almost a version of apartheid. It's judging people based on something... It's forcing people to vote a certain way in many ways, or say you are less than human if you don't... Because you have to be less than human because we are not going to give you help in the most dire of circumstances.
That is, I think, what it reveals, that the extent of the hysteria around political tribalism has reached a point where people actually don't see the other side as human anymore.
Yeah.
Which is why you end up with assassination attempts and all this kind of thing. Yeah. Very, very scary stuff, really. But anyway, next on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be talking about the attacks on Jews on the streets of Europe, in the Netherlands. So please do join us for that harrowing story.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Oedipus is back in the theatre, as Stefan Kyriazis can tell me. Stefan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
A good Oedipus or a bad one?
It's a great one. It's divided the critics a little bit. So some would prefer more kind of truth to the original text, perhaps a little bit more sense of the kind of epic Greek tragedy. I mean, this is Sophocles. It's 2,500 years old, and it's still one of the best, literally, no pun, the mother of all tragedies. It's just absolutely staggering. You like that?
I did. Where and with whom?
So this one is on at the Wyndham Theatre until January the 4th. The exciting thing is Mark Strong as Oedipus, Leslie Manville as his wife, Jocasta, and it's been reframed, you'll see from the pictures, as a modern political thriller. So he is waiting for election results, general election results, you will remember. There's a clock ticking down in the background. They're at Campaign HQ. They're waiting for it to click down to zero. We increasingly know that when it hits zero, terrible truths are coming. So it's operating on two levels. He's obsessed with the truth. He says very famously, I am me. He's so proud of his sense of who he is. And of course, that's all going to be horrendously ripped away. Mark Strong is wonderful. And then when we get to the very end and the horrific final reveal, I forgot. I was so gripped in the political thriller and everything else, I actually swore under my breath in the theatre, Michael, because I just had been so engrossed, and they play very well at other mysteries going on and a family drama, that when my penny dropped, I literally was devastated, and they do it. Even the critics that haven't loved this reframing admit, the two of them, and especially at the end, it's searingly agonising. It's glorious.
2,500 years later, it's still absolutely visceral.
Yeah, absolutely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So on Thursday night, Jews were targeted and beaten across the Dutch capital of Amsterdam. Reports tried to suggest it was in retaliation to Israeli football fans tearing down a Palestinian flag. Other reports suggested it was a premeditated attack. The King of Netherlands and Foreign Secretary David Lammy and the US President Joe Biden have all called it out for what it is, an act of anti-Semitism. But joining me now is the author Harry Saul Markham. Welcome to the show, Harry. Thank you. So tell us a bit about your reaction when you saw the footage of this going on in Amsterdam.
So, Andrew, I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised. Mm-hmm. I was shocked because we are in the year 2024, not 1944, and you would think that such acts in this day and age are, well, frankly, unconscionable. But I wasn't surprised. And I wasn't surprised because it is 2024, and we are living in an age where, in Western Europe, multiculturalism has tolerated anti-Jewish thinking within large sections of our Muslim communities, and unfortunately, that spawns the kind of violent actions we have seen, we saw on Thursday night.
We've seen a lot of this kind of thing of various Jewish monuments being defaced with bloody handprints or red handprints. I know the actor Tracy Ann Oberlin put out a tweet about a Jewish property being attacked in this kind of way.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't really covering that. But when I see that, it's very visceral to me. I see that and I think this is like, you know, the Third Reich is thrown around an awful lot. But these targeted attacks on Jewish communities does have echoes of that. I don't think you can get away from it.
It certainly does. And people ask, how did the Holocaust happen in enlightened, developed Europe? And I think now we can ask the question, how can we see such horrific scenes on the streets of a capital which is known for its tolerance, openness and diversity? And I think when people ask that about Nazi Germany, we say it's because Germany was enlightened and progressive. And I think the same answer needs to be given in the case of Western Europe today. We are seeing the kind of violence, the horrific scenes, because for so long we have allowed anti-Jewish, anti-Western thinking to develop, and that creates these horrific acts of violence.
So let's talk a bit about that, because one of the things I've noticed is on the various pro-Palestine marches, I would say the vast majority of people there are peaceful. They don't want to attack Jewish people. But there are definitely people on those marches who have openly expressed anti-Semitic hatred.
Absolutely.
I think what does concern me about that is that those things, when they happen, don't appear to be condemned by the majority of the people who were there for other reasons. If I was on a march or a protest and someone put up something horrific like that, like supporting of Hamas, a group that wants to wipe Jews off the planet, I would have something to say about that. But so it's not just that there's a minority, it's that the majority seem to be tolerating the minority.
Well, in the history of anti-Semitism, it is never the majority that commit acts of horrific violence. It's the majority that allows the minority to get away with committing horrific acts of violence. So when people say that, yes, the majority of these pro-Palestinian marches are not violent, I completely agree, but they allow a culture of dehumanisation to to flourish in their ranks.
So how do we deal with this? I mean, you mentioned multiculturalism, and it is true that there are certain cultures around the world in which anti-Semitism is completely normalised to the extent that it is taught in schools and promoted that way. But on the other hand, there will be many Muslim people watching the footage from Amsterdam saying, that's outrageous, not in our name, this is nothing to do with us. You know, and so therefore we have to be careful, don't we, not to sort of stigmatise an entire community.
Absolutely. Look, I proudly worked for the Association of British Muslims, the oldest British Muslim organisation in this country. I absolutely believe in a multicultural society, and we must absolutely amplify the voices of our Muslim voices within our communities that are working for change. Multicultural societies can work, and there is one multicultural society which is a wonderful example of that: Israel. The Israeli society is extraordinarily diverse. You see in Israel, I was there a few months ago, you see people from Ethiopia, you see people there from Russia, people from all walks of life. The reason Israeli multiculturalism works, and this comes from a conversation Angela Merkel had with Benjamin Netanyahu back in 2015 after she said, "Wir schaffen das, we can do this," and allowed, I think, close to 1 million refugees and migrants to come into Germany. On this phone call, she asked, how do you absorb so successfully such a large number of people into your country? And her answer, Benjamin Netanyahu's answer was that yes, whilst we have All-Pan and we have these various things to promote integration, ultimately the majority of people who come to our country share our values. And what I think we need to see in Western Europe is we need to have a values-based immigration approach, which allows people from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds, to come and settle in our country, but they must absolutely subscribe to the values of the country they're settling in.
Why do you think there is such a reticence to tackle trends within communities that are disturbing? For instance, when Trevor Phillips did his very rigorous survey of British Muslims and found that a little over half of British Muslims felt that homosexuality ought to be illegal, and then The Guardian came out and tried to say, oh, Trevor Phillips has got it all wrong, we shouldn't listen to this. Why are they not siding with, for example, gay Muslims in that? Why are they always siding with the most reactionary element within the community? Why aren't they siding with women within the Muslim community who don't want to wear their veils?
Because as much as I love liberals, liberalism is in crisis. Western Europe is suffering from a crisis of values. And that crisis is not knowing what our values are. Because how can you possibly stand up for values if you haven't defined what you stand for? How can you possibly defend what you believe to be right if we haven't established our own moral compass? And I see that the liberal abandonment of liberalism is really symptomatic of this much broader crisis of philosophy which rages in the West.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest, that actually I don't think it is liberalism is causing the problem. I think it's a failure to enact the principles of liberalism, which is that, you know, we should all be under the same rule of law, we should all be treated equally irrespective of our skin colour, we shouldn't have the police saying we're not going to investigate because we want to be called racist. You know, we should apply the law to every citizen irrespective of skin colour.
But this is so... What's really important to note is that what happened on Thursday night occurred during the month of Islamophobia Awareness Month. And that's important because what we're seeing across Western Europe is that various authorities find it a lot more politically expedient, socially convenient to deal with those that are calling for debate about issues within Islam. They find it easier to silence those people, prosecute or find any means of silencing them, than they do actually confronting the issue. And one specific example illustrates why. When Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen were debating in France for the French election, Marine Le Pen suggested that France bans the head covering, the hijab. Now, that's a proposal, of course, I vehemently disagree with. But Macron's rebuttal to that, his disagreement, was based on the idea that that policy would cause civil war. The fact is, Western European governments are scared.
Well, that's a problem as well. I think to treat one particular community as uniquely combustible is a soft form of racism, isn't it?
It's what Manfred Gerstenfeld described as humanitarian racism. It's this idea that, well, because people aren't of people aren't white, they themselves can't be held to the same standards as everybody else. And frankly, being in such a state of affairs really means that we can't actually get people to talk about the issues, which mean that the Muslim voices which want to reclaim the soul of Islam feel so abandoned and from not only their fellow Muslims, but from the country at large. And we see this burgeoning populist movements across Western Europe. And we have to say, look, if we want to deal with populism, if we want to deal with any form of extremism, those on the centre ground have to have some teeth and have to be willing to discuss the issues which have led to the rise of Geert Wilders, which have led to the rise of Marine Le Pen. I mean, it's extraordinary to think that it's the likes of Geert Wilders in the Netherlands that is taking the leading role in standing up for Jews. I mean, who would have thought the populist right would be the most, at least seemingly, philo-Semitic of all political movements, and the left, which was once home to many Jews, has not only abandoned the Jews, but has emboldened anti-Semites.
Very disturbing stuff. Harry, Saul, Markham, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Next on Free Speech Nation, is Donald Trump's return to the White House a triumph or a tragedy? Don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been another cloudy day for many of us, but there is some bluer skies and some brighter weather on the horizon as we head into the new working week. We do still have a weather front to contend with through the rest of today, though, continuing to slip its way southwards across the UK through the end of the weekend. And then it's this area of high pressure developing out towards the west that brings us those sunnier skies into next week. So this weather front out in the south of the UK continues to sink its way southwards, still bringing some cloudy skies and some outbreaks of rain to the southern portion of the UK overnight and into the early hours of Monday morning. But further north, a different story. Plenty of clear spells and turning quite chilly under those clear spells too. We could see temperatures dropping into the low single figures. But generally staying that little bit milder under that cloud in the very far south of the UK. And that does mean quite a cloudy and damp start, particularly for southwestern parts of England through Monday morning, with some outbreaks of rain and drizzle across the hills. For the rest of England and Wales, though, generally a dry and bright start to the morning. For Northern Ireland, still staying dry, but perhaps a bit of mist and fog around to start first thing. And for Scotland, also a dry and bright start to the morning, although maybe one or two isolated showers across parts of Shetland and Orkney first thing. So generally staying dry and bright through much of Monday morning, plenty of sunshine on offer. That weather front does eventually sink its way southwards across the southwest of the UK, so plenty of sunshine across the board as we head in towards Monday afternoon. There might be one or two isolated showers just across eastern parts of England, but these generally quite light and quite scattered. And despite temperatures being round about average for the time of year, it will be feeling pleasant in any of that sunshine. The sunshine continues through the rest of Monday and staying dry and clear overnight. So that does mean quite a chilly start for most of us on Tuesday morning, maybe some mist and fog around, but otherwise another dry day across the board. Plenty of sunny spells on offer. Maybe one or two isolated showers still clipping across the very far southeast, but there should be more sunshine on the way as we head through Wednesday and Thursday as well. And temperatures will generally be staying around about average, but definitely feeling pleasant in the sunshine.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So later in the show, I'll be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel. Bruce Devlin and Paul Cox will help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems, just message us at gbnews.com/your say, and we'll help you deal with all of your personal problems, I promise. Anyway, Donald Trump is heading back to the White House in January after defeating Democrat competition Kamala Harris in the US presidential election. But what does that mean for the future of America? Well, joining me now is geopolitical expert and geopolitical expert Roger Gewolb and UK political commentator Matthew Stadlin. Welcome both. Thank you. Matthew, I'm going to come to you first. Obviously, you're speaking as an outsider. We don't have skin in the game over there, but I know that you would have probably preferred, is it fair to say, probably would have preferred Kamala Harris to have won. But why do you think it was that she was so roundly beaten in all respects?
I think it was a mixture of things, don't you? I think there was definitely some sexism, probably a little bit of racism. I can see I'm among friends here. Yeah. And I think first time in front of a live GB News.
Oh, really? Oh. Very special.
Very special.
You were saying it's all about racism.
No, I didn't. I said there's a little bit of sexism, a little bit of racism. I think it'd be naive not to think that. But there was also major concerns about the economy. I mean, it depends how you look at the American economy. If you look at it, I think, in terms of GDP, it wasn't doing too badly. And the Americans, like the British eventually, have sort of got on top of inflation. Yeah. But for too long, groceries cost too much. And Donald Trump was hammering home that message. You know, the old phrase, the economy's stupid. I mean, I could go on. Kamala Harris, not the best candidate, perhaps. Donald Trump, extremely charismatic, even if he does bore on hour after hour at his rallies.
But also very unpopular among certain people.
Very unpopular among certain people. It's a hugely divisive election.
Yes. OK, well, let's ask Roger, do you think that's a fair analysis of what happened?
It's not bad, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what I think happened, really. Barack Obama picked Joe Biden so that he couldn't be upstaged. And Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris for the same reason. and Kamala Harris picked Tim Walz, taking the strategy, taking the envelope to its extreme. And voters weren't going to buy that because he's such a weird nutcase. It's unbelievable.
Are you saying that people are centering their own egos too much in all of this?
No.
Because, I mean, that could be levelled at Donald Trump as well.
Those people, sure, of course, except that J.D. Vance is a challenge to Trump. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that Obama pushed that strategy, as long as he could. And when the levers didn't make the cadaver walk across the stage any longer, and he found himself in a terrible situation, they had to choose Kamala, everybody's last choice. Nobody'd vote at the primary, and they had the terrible task of trying to make her a Hollywood superstar overnight.
Sure, and you've got to feel for her in a way, because she's not presidential material, let's be honest. And, you know, she was put in this at the last minute, and like you say, has been fading upwards for a long time.
Who?
Kamala Harris.
Who?
There we go.
It's like waking from a bad dream, Andrew.
She has disappeared from view.
It's like waking.
Still talking about.
It's like waking from a bad dream.
I don't think Biden deliberately passed on the baton to her so that she could fail. Although he did seem more lucid and perhaps more cheerful than he has in a long time.
We all noticed that. He seemed delighted, didn't he?
The day after the election. Listen, I think this is a kind of a key point, which I don't know whether you guys will agree with or not, but I don't think, having said that there was a little bit of sexism, a little bit of racism, I don't think that 70-odd million American voters are racist and sexist. I think some of them are, without doubt, and we know that the far right cleave to Trump. What I think is that a lot of Americans think that Trump is a bad guy. Who amongst you would like your husband, your boyfriend, your son, your father to be found in a civil court to be liable for sexual assault? I think not many people think he's a good guy, but people like his policies.
Being tried by
a
traffic court judge.
Well,
who's been dragged.
You're undermining your own
judicial system. Let's just pursue this one step at a time. So, Matthew, so you raised that point, and of course, I agree with you. I think any society will have racist and sexist people because we're dealing with human beings. Don't think there's enough to swing an election, however. And I also worry that maybe that strategy of focusing and saying, you know, that everyone is racist, everyone's sexist, it actually swings to the other. It works against you.
Look, I think there's no doubt that Trump has, in the past, courted racists and courted misogynists. Look at the language that he uses, violent rhetoric against women. But absolutely, as I've just said, not all of those Americans are sexist or racist. And I think it was a mistake of Kamala Harris to call him a fascist. Even even though this is a man who 4 years ago tried to deny a democratic election, and that is fascistic in itself as an act. And I also thought it was a big mistake of Biden to suggest that some of these American voters, or 70 million as it turned out, plus, are garbage. That's very similar to what Hillary Clinton did in 2016 when she described the other side as a basket of deplorables.
I should say he denies that.
But
He does deny it.
Fine, but there was this suggestion. And that is a big mistake to allow that to be suggested.
Roger, can I ask you about that specifically?
Yeah, they're valid points, but they're all fringe, Matthew. I mean, he won the largest popular vote of any Republican president since Bush Sr. in 2004. He won the largest ethnic minority vote of any Republican president in 50 years. He's just got Arizona. He has all 7 swing states. I mean, this is massive. These are not
Bush Jr.
Junior, sorry. These are not sexist, racist. This was there for a long time. This was always going to happen. Look at the British bookies. The polls may have said one thing.
The polls said it was very close.
The polls said it was very close. The bookies always said he's way ahead. Let me ask you one question. I have 2 questions I want to ask you. Somebody with your political and broadcast background, you're the perfect expert to answer this.
I feel like I'm being set up to
No, you're not. This is all a very open adult debate.
He is.
Roger,
He is.
ask your question.
Ask him a question. I have 2 questions. The first question is, why in the world would the Dems give up the strategic advantage of having their candidate sitting as the incumbent president running the United States of America and the free world on ruddy election day? Who would give up an advantage like that?
Is your second question connected to that, or shall I ask Matthew to answer that?
I'm going to answer it and then see what he says. It's because they were so afraid she would cock up and make a mistake before 5th November and lose them the election that they didn't make her president.
It is true, isn't it, Matthew, that had Kamala Harris been the incoming president, it would have been much, much more advantageous.
I simply don't know the answer to that. It may have been, it may not have been. I think there's certainly mileage in the idea that because she was tied to the incumbent government, the incumbent regime, that was a massive disadvantage for her, because governments have been getting a big kicking, as we saw in this country and elsewhere, although in this country we've moved to the left, all over the place. If you are tied to a government that is seen to have failed, rightly or wrongly, on the economy, you're going to struggle.
But she's come out and said she wouldn't change anything Biden did.
Well, that's
I think that's loyalty, though, isn't it?
Sorry, that makes my point, and I think it makes your point.
If she had been President Harris
she's defending the incumbency, which is very difficult if the incumbency...
If you were running the
Roger, go.
If you were running the campaign, wouldn't you want President Harris as the candidate, for God's sake? And there she is running things and talking to Zelensky and this and that.
Well, I don't think Biden should be president right now. I think it's been...
No, you're not answering the question.
I can't get inside Biden's mind as to why he didn't step aside.
If you were campaign manager, would you or would you not want Kamala to be the president?
It was difficult this is a sort of a fringe issue, I think, because it was difficult to hard enough to shift Biden in the first place, wasn't it? To get him to step aside.
But having done...
Sorry, Matthew, do you think that the Democrats did fail insofar as they should have admitted to Biden's cognitive problems earlier?
It was perfectly obvious to me, as someone who deeply dislikes Trump, for Trump, not Truss.
Freudian slip there.
Freudian slip.
I have interviewed Truss in front of a live audience, actually, in Edinburgh, which, to her credit, was very brave, because it was the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah.
But for someone who dislikes Trump as much as I do, both for his personal behaviour and what he stands for, I was appalled.
Have you ever met him?
No, I was appalled that Biden... Appalled.
Yeah, but finally, Roger, because I know...
Can I just finish? I'm appalled that Biden was ever going to be the candidate. Sure. And you look at him since he stepped down, and it was just so blindingly obvious that bit of us that was holding on my side, that was holding on to the idea that he could actually be the candidate, blown out of the water.
Finally, Roger, because I know that you know Trump and you are a fan, but on the other hand, Matthew does raise some interesting points. You know, he did raise the temperature needlessly on January the 6th. You know, he has said that he'd like to lock people away for a year for flag burning. He did ask to find extra votes. Do these elements of his behaviour not concern you?
No. No, I think that in the world that we live in today, with the tsunami of wokeism and insanity that we all live with on a daily basis, I don't think that a little threatening like that is a bad thing.
I don't live with it. I'm quite happy with my life, thanks.
If you met Trump,
bad result, not much wokery going on.
If you met Trump,
let Roger finish.
If you met Trump, even you, Matthew, 5 minutes later, you'd be asking if you'd come back for dinner the next night.
I'm not sure he'd feel the same about me.
Well, that's not a thing we can put to the test, unfortunately, because he's not returning my calls. But thank you very much, Matthew and Roger. Thank you. Next on Free Speech Nation, does the West need to fight for its history? I'm going to be speaking to an author who believes that it does. Don't go anywhere.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The latest Channel 4 Dispatches documentary has revealed details about the royal family's finances, including reports that private royal estates have received millions of pounds of income from public bodies and charities.
Yeah, it's been claimed that the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall portfolios have generated almost £50 million.
Well, the contracts with public bodies said to include a £37 million agreement with the Ministry of Justice, an £11.4 million deal between Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Trust. This is what appeared on the programme last night.
Charles and William aren't telling you about their secret millions.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for paying your rent every now and then.
Their private estates, the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, make Charles and William £50 million a year. But they have repeatedly refused to reveal exactly which properties they own.
Can we have a report on the list of properties?
I don't see why. I'm not really shocked that they're making money. That's the whole point of them, isn't it?
Morning, and morning, Stephen. Absolutely, I'm not shocked either. And also, as a former butler, I was also a duchy rentee. I used to rent one of the properties, and we were always aware of the property portfolio. I don't think it's kind of a bit news thing. Obviously, part of the, if you like, the business side is these two duchies, Cornwall and Lancaster, and the late Queen obviously was the Duke as well of Lancaster, and now you've got the Prince was obviously, or the King, as when he was Prince, had the duchy, and these properties, portfolios as well. I mean, obviously they make money. I mean, but they've been around for, I think they go back to George III, if not before.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. My next guest has just released a new book called The War Against the Past, Why the West Must Fight for Its History. And I'm delighted to say that the author, Frank Ferretti, joins me now. Frank, welcome to the show. Congratulations on the book. Could you perhaps tell us what your central thesis is?
Well, what the book is really all about is that there seems to be this constant attempt to devalue the past, to continually argue that everything to do with the legacy of our human experience is something we should be ashamed about, particularly in the Anglo-American world. And we're getting continually attacked about what Shakespeare did, about what Chaucer did, about what Aristotle did, about every single positive experience. And instead of asking the question, well, who are we, where we come from, what can we take forward from the legacy of the past, the answer seems to be, forget it all, leave it behind, it's toxic. We need to kind of have a year zero ideology where we leave everything behind and we got to start anew. And I think that sensibility undermines young people's capacity to have an identity of knowing where they've come from. But it also makes us confused and disoriented because we cannot really trust our own ancestors, if we cannot trust, where we come from, then it becomes difficult for us.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, Frank, because I listened to a podcast on Shakespeare the other day, and within the first 3 minutes, the hosts had said, don't worry, we're not going to be centering dead white men, we're going to be problematizing these texts. What on earth do you think that brings to the table?
Well, it seems to be the case that what these people do is they regard people like Shakespeare as their peers. And instead of looking at Shakespeare's work, their job is to take them to task, basically teach Shakespeare a lesson. And very often they assume that they know better than Shakespeare did about what was really going on in his mind. And they correct Shakespeare, they rewrite Shakespeare, but they do that with everybody. And there seems to be this kind of sense of arrogance where you assume that someone like Shakespeare not only knew less than we did, but was morally inferior to who we are. We are somehow so superior that we can teach everybody who lived over the last 2,000-3,000 years a lesson.
Can I ask you, Frank, where do you think that lack of humility comes from?
The lack of humility is interesting. I think what it is, it kind of, there's an assumption that somehow people who are woke and are aware have this incredible moral insight into the ways of the world, and somehow they've been gifted with understanding, sort of how the world works. And their job, in the first instance, is to raise people's awareness. People like you, people like me, we need our awareness raised by these people. But then they look backwards and they begin to raise the awareness of Immanuel Kant or Aristotle. And there seems to be this idea that through reading history backwards, what you're doing is you're putting right all the problems that these individuals have created over thousands of years.
And that's interesting because there's been a lot of examples of revisionism, the idea of literally saying, misrepresenting what actually happened. What's happening there?
Well, a bit of revisionism is not a problem. There's always been revisionism, but this is, what we're seeing now is very different. They're not only revising what has happened, but basically they're rewriting people's philosophies, people's plays. They're basically saying that what Shakespeare really meant was something very different than what he said on paper. They're saying that Immanuel Kant was actually a real racist, but was too embarrassed to acknowledge it. And therefore, we have to make his language far more racist than it really was. And this kind of arrogance, where you essentially colonize the past and kind of project backwards your own prejudice and assumptions, is quite unprecedented. It's never happened before.
So this is a new thing, you think? This isn't something that is just the way that young people always behave when they rebel? No,
I think that there's nothing wrong with rebellion. I think rebellion is very healthy. There's nothing wrong with rethinking the past. That's also very healthy. It's even okay to revise our understanding of the past. But what isn't okay is where you basically colonize the past and project backwards your own prejudices and see everything entirely through your own, the prism of your own woke politics.
Thanks very much, Frank Freddy. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
That's the end of the first hour. Join us again.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been another cloudy day for many of us, but there is some bluer skies and some brighter weather on the horizon as we head into the new working week. We do still have a weather front to contend with through the rest of today, though, continuing to slip its way southwards across the UK through the end of the weekend. And then it's this area of high pressure developing out towards the west that brings us those sunnier skies into next week. So this weather front out in the south of the UK continues to sink its way southwards, still bringing some cloudy skies and some outbreaks of rain to the southern portion of the UK overnight and into the early hours of Monday morning. But further north, a different story. Plenty of clear spells and turning quite chilly under those clear spells too. We could see temperatures dropping into the low single figures. But generally staying that little bit milder under that cloud in the very far south of the UK. And that does mean quite a cloudy and damp start, particularly for southwestern parts of England through Monday morning, with some outbreaks of rain and drizzle across the hills. For the rest of England and Wales, though, generally a dry and bright start to the morning. For Northern Ireland, still staying dry, but perhaps a bit of mist and fog around to start first thing. And for Scotland, also a dry and bright start to the morning, although maybe one or two isolated showers across parts of Shetland and Orkney first thing.
So generally staying dry and bright through much of Monday morning, plenty of sunshine on offer. That weather front does eventually sink its way southwards across the southwest of the UK, so plenty of sunshine across the board as we head in towards Monday afternoon. There might be one or two isolated showers just across eastern parts of England, but these generally quite light and quite scattered. And despite temperatures being round about average for the time of year, it will be feeling pleasant in any of that sunshine. The sunshine continues through the rest of Monday and staying dry and clear overnight. So that does mean quite a chilly start for most of us on Tuesday morning, maybe some mist and fog around, but otherwise another dry day across the board. Plenty of sunny spells on offer. Maybe one or two isolated showers still clipping across the very far southeast, but there should be more sunshine on the way as we head through Wednesday and Thursday as well. And temperatures will generally be staying around about average, but definitely feeling pleasant in the sunshine.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to win Christmas on Us this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
hello.
Really
Good
to see you this
Thank
morning.
you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
you won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first.
Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour, so...
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
Wait, no, it's salty, yeah.
It's
okay.
salty.
Hang on, bit more.
Okay.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Is it crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes, nailed it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh, you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, but let's get a news update first from Sophia Wenslow.
Good evening. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom at 8 o'clock. To the US, where Joe Biden is reportedly set to make a personal plea to Donald Trump about the importance of funding Ukraine. It's understood the outgoing president will urge Trump not to walk away from Ukraine when the pair meet in the Oval Office on Wednesday. Elsewhere, Israel's Prime Minister says he and Donald Trump see eye to eye on Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu said he has spoken to the US president-elect 3 times since the election. And sticking to US politics, this morning, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, has said that it is probably unlikely that the government will work with Nigel Farage as an intermediary to the Trump administration, adding that Mr Farage should focus on working with his constituents in Clacton as opposed to being a transatlantic commentator. The nation has fallen silent as the King led a 2-minute silence to mark Remembrance Sunday and honour fallen soldiers at 11 o'clock this morning. Big Ben chimed 11 times and the last post was played before King Charles, dressed in his Royal Navy uniform of the Admiral of the Fleet, laid a wreath at the cenotaph. He was joined by members of the royal family, including Prince and Princess of Wales. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, both laid wreaths. They were also joined by former Prime Ministers. Today is also the first time since the start of the year that the Princess of Wales, who is recovering from cancer, is carrying out 2 consecutive days of public official engagements. 10,000 veterans have marched past the cenotaph as part of the Royal British Legion's parade. In London, a manhunt is underway after a shooting left 1 dead and 2 injured. Officers were called to Wells Park Road in Sydenham this morning, where they found a man with gunshot injuries who sadly died at the scene. A woman and a third person were taken to hospital with what are also thought to be gunshot wounds. No arrests have yet been made over what the Metropolitan Police are calling a senseless act of violence. And dozens of pro-Palestinian demonstrators have been detained by police in Amsterdam after ignoring a ban on public protests in the Dutch capital. Hundreds of demonstrators defied the ban to gather in Dam Square, chanting demands for an end to violence in Gaza and free Palestine. But police moved in, instructing protesters to leave, and several people were dragged away. The 3-day ban was imposed by the court from Friday after Israeli football fans were targeted in so-called hit-and-run attacks on Thursday night. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Let's get some more questions from this lovely audience. Our first question is from Olivia. Hello.
Hi, the question is simple, but maybe the answer's less so. Can anyone really define gender identity?
Can you define gender identity, Olivia?
Absolutely not.
No. This is a very interesting one because we've talked about this on this show quite a lot insofar as a lot of public policy, health policy, school policy, you name it, gets passed through on this basis of this thing called gender identity. But does anyone actually know what it means? And there was an interesting discussion in the House of Lords this week. Jackie Smith, who is, of course, the government's spokesperson for equalities, was asked this very question. Let's have a look and see what happened.
Does the government have a working definition of gender and gender identity? And if so, could they share it with the House?
I think the Noble Lord would be well advised to look at the Equality Act, for example. But I have to say that I think this would be a better debate if we spent more time worrying about how we provide services, how we account for people's needs, and less about how we catch our political opponents out.
In other words, we can't define it. We've got no idea how to define it. We're going to push through lots of public policy anyway, based on this magical notion. And by the way, go and have a look at the Equality Act, which also doesn't define it. What do you make of that?
Well, it's nonsense, isn't it?
It's ridiculous.
It's a total and utter nonsense. And the fact is, this is the top of our country's political system. That's the House of Lords debating that.
Yeah.
And it's laughed at as well. The reason it's laughed, I mean, those people are normally asleep. They're all awake just to find out what the answer to this question is, because we all want to know.
It's really interesting. She went on the offensive and she started saying then, you should take this more seriously. You didn't see it in that clip. But she said you should take this more seriously. Like, people do take this desperately seriously. Campaigners, women's rights campaigners, gay rights campaigners take it really seriously because it threatens their rights. And it's interesting because Denise Denise Farmy, who's been on this show, she worked for the Arts Council, she tweeted at Jackie Smith saying, look, I'm taking this seriously. What does gender identity mean? You're the spokesperson for equalities and women. You need to know what it is.
I don't think we should find ourselves in this position. I think we should be able to... You remember in the old days when you could just wind the tape back?
Yeah.
I think we need to be able to wind back to about 2004, when everybody knew there were two genders. Boys had willies, girls didn't.
Thank goodness.
Bruce, do you want to come in on this? Do you think there's a definition, a working definition of gender identity?
I don't think there is nowadays.
No, I don't.
No, that's the whole thing.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Also, her hair was a wee bit dry. Just saying. So, you know, that's important to me. I'm taking that seriously. That is a tinderbox.
Would conditioner help that situation?
I should think so. I used to say the same about Nicola Sturgeon. She was once health secretary. You know, conditioner is not expensive on a 3 for 2 from Boots.
Excellent insight there from Bruce. I have to say, by the way, I did ask a trans campaigner on this show to define gender identity, and I was told that it is an essence of male or female.
No.
So make of that what you will. OK, so let's move on to another question now. This is from Anton. Hello, Anton.
Who do you think should be the next James Bond?
Me.
The next James Bond? Yeah. Well, OK. The reason this has come up, of course, is because Daniel Craig was asked this question this week, and he had a brilliant answer. He said, I don't care. I think that is the right answer. Do you care who should be the next Bond?
No, and I don't think anyone except a James Bond fan does. I remember when people were saying, but James Bond should be a woman. Well, unless James is transitioning, and we go to the clinic with James and we go through all the bits
Very
and
different
pieces.
kind of film, though.
Absolutely. More of a documentary. But the thing is, I don't think it should be based on... I don't think he should be gay, because I don't think James Bond is.
A gay James Bond. He's a
you?
philanderer.
But aren't most homos? I mean, honestly, the STIs out in that staff room. It's like syphilis soup, it's rife.
OK.
They call this channel Gay Boy News. We've just been talking about it.
OK, there are a number of homosexuals who work here.
My God, a number! Lady, you're looking at 3 of them.
Well, let's move to the heterosexual on the panel here, who's going to...
She's out the room.
No, you can't. I don't think you can have a gay James Bond because he likes the ladies. You can't have a female James Bond because he's called James. But why does it matter? Why do people get so uptight about it?
Well, I think people who are really invested in James Bond like James Bond for what he is, an action man.
And he's not a very nice man, is he?
No.
He's got a licence to kill. He kills people.
Exactly.
Right, so
but he does then go and make love to people.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, it's sweet, sweet love.
Yes.
But it's quite aggressive love as well. I mean, he's not a nice guy.
Well, this is
sexually assaults people. He kills people. He's...
Alleged.
Look, I'm not alleging anything. It's said explicitly in the Ian Fleming books.
Yes.
He's a monster.
But he does it in a macho way, and people like it, Andrew. And the problem is... Well, do they? We'll ask... No, we won't.
No, let's not do that.
So it presents a problem to the people that are going to produce the films.
Yeah.
Because in today's society, they've been trying to... Every film has to have this kind of essence of sort of ideology around gender.
Yeah, but he's a toxic straight white male.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how can they perpetuate something so successful because he's a toxic straight white male?
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. But that's why it's taken so long, and why Daniel Craig doesn't care. They might as well have that boxer, Elaine Khalif or whatever her name is.
Do you know who they should have just to really have a laugh with? Shirley Bassey. Bring Shirley in.
Yes.
She could do the theme tune and play James all for the same money.
I think the idea of singing your own theme tune is...
I think that's
I'm
great.
well behind that.
I'm phoning the Broccolis.
Let's do it. Let's do it. OK, let's move on now to a question from Joe. Joe, what about you?
How does the panel think that David Lammy will get along with Donald Trump, given his earlier uncomplimentary remarks, to say the least?
I think, I mean, that's one way of putting it. Because, of course, back in the day, a number of years ago, when Trump was visiting the UK, Lammy put out a tweet which was very unflattering. Do we have that tweet? Let's have a look at this. He actually referred to him quite explicitly as a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath and called him a tyrant as well. We'll try and find that tweet in a moment. It is somewhere in the system. No, that's Frank's book. But believe me, that's what he said. He said he was a KKK sympathiser, Nazi sympathiser. And, of course, this week, he's tweeted out saying, congratulations, Donald Trump. You've done really, really well. Now, I think, Paul, if it is the case that David Lammy genuinely believes that Trump is a Nazi KKK sympathiser, it's actually morally repugnant for him to tweet congratulations, which I would therefore suggest that he never really believed it in the first place.
Well, I'll tell you what he does believe. He believes that having the job that he's got is the most important thing to him. He's the
Foreign Secretary.
Yeah, exactly, right? So a Foreign Secretary should be kind of dull and in the background and maintaining relationships. David Lammy is a wally.
Yeah.
And he is not just a wally. He is one of our biggest wallies, and we have got him as our Foreign Secretary. You can stand up in a comedy club now, stand there, be quiet for a minute and just say, David Lammy's our Foreign Secretary, and you will get a 2-minute laugh.
Well, this is interesting because he also said that the European Research Group, supporters of Brexit, he said it wasn't strong enough to refer to them as Nazis or compare them to Nazis. He likes to compare people to Nazis, but he clearly doesn't mean it.
Has he met a Nazi? Has he had a bad experience with a Nazi? Because he seems damaged or injured. It would be interesting, though, if he met Donald Trump to see if Donald would hold his hand, because you know that Donald's upset about his hands, and David has quite a big hand.
I mean, that's an interesting way of putting it. Actually, Bruce, to bring it back to, the subject, what I would say is, actually, David Lammy has met Donald Trump. Yeah. Donald Trump claims that they get on really well. He really likes him. Which is a really nice twist.
What's wrong with David, then?
I think...
Well, he's a liar. He's disingenuous.
I mean, he's not telling the truth when he says
he's absolutely disingenuous. I said liar. I meant that, but we're on telly, so let's go with disingenuous.
I think you're allowed to say it. I think other politicians aren't allowed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean...
Well, he was either lying then, or he's being really grotesque now and supporting...
Well, he hasn't changed his mind in that time.
No.
He tweeted what he did previously to win political favour. He's tweeting what he is now. He has done now to win political favour. It's all just politics, and it's also a load of old...
Of course.
Codswallop.
Yeah, exactly.
Codswallop was the word we were looking for there before the watershed. Let's move on to a question from Rob. Do we have Rob? Hi.
Should pubs implement surge pricing and increase the price of drinks by £2 after 10 p.m?
Do you like a drink, Rob?
Clearly.
Clearly. I just asked it. No, I wasn't being rude. I'm asking that because, it's this... which is the pub that's doing this now? It's a pub in London. It's at O'Neill's in Wardour Street. That's the one, yeah. They've said after 10 o'clock they're going to add £2. So that brings it up to what? £9.40, something like that. So you're paying almost a tenner then. But they're going to do that after 10 o'clock. Is that fair?
No.
Well, I mean,
no. It's nothing to... We've been drinking buddies for years. No, I do. I think O'Neill's will find they'll be empty after 10 o'clock at night. And it's the same with Uber and all that kind of stuff. It's just, you need one price. Be consistent with
Isn't that weird, the idea that O'Neill's don't realise there are other pubs in Soho?
Exactly. Some of them I go to for obvious reasons. But the thing that annoys me about pubs now, all pubs in Soho, it's like, do you want to add a tip? It's like, can I get my drink first? Yeah. And could you stop putting so much tonic in it? And can I speak to the manager? But no, I think we boycott O'Neill's. It's honking anyway.
It is honking.
Clean. Yeah.
They do put too much tonic.
But they do. You can't drown it. Stop it.
Exactly. You want to taste the gin.
Thank you.
You want to taste the poison.
It's like question time meets loose women today.
Yeah. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah. I just love
this. Now, do you like a drink, Paul?
Well, yes, I do, Andrew. Not to the extent there's a problem, because I have to drive absolutely everywhere.
Yes, exactly. But £2 on a pint. A pint costing £9.40. Would you pay that?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't go to O'Neill's in Soho. I'm more of your Wetherspoons in Bracknell.
Does O'Neill's in Soho, are they putting up the price of Chablis?
I bet they're not.
Are they putting up the price of creme de menthe?
They're not. They just don't want people to drink pints in there. But O'Neill's is like an Irish bar.
Yeah, well, faux Irish, yeah.
Do you know that Chablis is the same grape as Chardonnay?
I did know that.
And yet people hate Chardonnay.
I know, but I think it's a psychological thing. They just say, I hate Chardonnay, but they don't know why.
No, but
you have a good
do you know
Chardonnay.
why? Do you know who says that? David Lammy.
I bet he does.
Yes, he does.
I bet David Lammy's been tweeting nonsense about Chardonnay.
Yes, absolutely.
And now he's going to change his mind.
Yeah, exactly.
He's on the board of the bloody wine, Blue Nun or whatever. OK. Do they still have Blue Nun?
Yeah.
I'm glad. Feels much better about that now.
And Black Tower.
And Baby Sham?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
All of my old faves.
And Asti Spumante.
Shall I get going? Or?
It's become a different show now, so let's move on. But next on Free Speech Nation, authors warn university cancel culture is eroding liberal values. I'm going to be joined by author and journalist Lionel Shriver. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News. Britain's news channel.
Well, her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunç Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together? That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunç and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror. And I've heard this story so many times before,
Yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan.
Yeah.
And they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I
you
know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause, and I just suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess you still, I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old
Yeah,
or even an
absolutely.
18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So some of Britain's most eminent authors have told ministers that literary freedom is being eroded by their failure to stand up to cancel culture on university campuses. In an attack on the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, more than 24 authors have accused the government of failing to safeguard humane and liberal values. And one of those authors joins me now. It's Lionel Shriver. Thank you ever so much for joining me on the show. I want to ask you first and foremost about Bridget Phillipson. She would disagree with you and say there's no problem whatsoever, having scotched the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act the night before it was due, Parliament was due to go into recess. So what is it that you know that she doesn't?
I know that I want to see universities become a large church again, and she doesn't seem to view the purpose of the university as being a place where people disagree and share conflicting views. Latterly, universities have spoken with one voice and have been viciously enforcing that you have to speak with that voice. And I was actually very pleased to sign this open letter because the kind of open letters that have been circulating lately among literary folks have been pro-censorship, and this one is finally speaking out for free speech. And I'm afraid that in the last 10 years, my colleagues in the literary world have not distinguished themselves and have been consistently failing to stick up for their own rights to express their distinctive views and to explore their own imaginations. And so it's about time we see writers saying, look, let's have a big public square. Let's first and foremost stick up for our right to say what we want to say rather than telling people what to say.
Can I ask you a bit about that? Because I know that back when PEN, the writers' organisation in America, gave an award to Charlie Hebdo, the French satirical magazine, and there was a letter by a whole group of eminent authors saying, no, we can't support them because they're Islamophobic or whatever it might be. Really huge authors like Joyce Carol Oates signed that letter. Why is it that authors, creative people, the most free-thinking people ostensibly in society, are the ones who have such a narrow mind when it comes to this issue?
That's what I found so disconcerting, because you would think that the people who are drawn to being writers, they're usually, I mean, traditionally, they're weirdos, right? They don't fit in. They're attracted to writing because it's a form through which they can express themselves because they don't feel comfortable in society. They stick out. They're socially graceless. I mean, that's the old tradition. And you know, why would you become a writer if you didn't have a sense of something unique to say that no one else is saying? And that means almost by definition, you're not a conformist, that you don't adopt other people's beliefs, and you don't, much less in your own work, do you seek to merely reflect what everyone else is writing? I mean, in that case, there's no point in writing it. It's already out there. Well, so I just find the behavior of my colleagues during this whole woke tyranny befuddling, and it's as if, oh, they want everyone to like them. But that's more important than preserving the rights that make their jobs possible.
Well, we've just had a story today about Jamie Oliver apologising for the representation of Indigenous Australian people in his new children's book. But I suppose I could put their argument forward, which would be the reason why lots of authors support sensitivity readers, support authors being monitored in terms of what they can say about minority groups, is that if they send out negative stereotypes, they will perpetuate real-world harm through their fiction. What do you make of that argument?
Well, of course, that word harm I have a real problem with, because actually it used to refer to, you know, physical pain or something, but now it just means experiencing a slight distress. I read that Jamie news story, and it seemed to me that he probably got a few things badly researched. So if I were he, I wouldn't have just withdrawn the book and groveled, which is what he did, but promised that if there's a reprint, he will correct some of the mistakes he made. It seemed to me that they were very picayune and would have been easy to fix.
Well, let me ask you about...
I'm really hopeful that this age of sensitivity readers, et cetera, is starting to come to a close. One of the things that was most cheerful about Donald Trump's victory in the U.S. is I think it not only is an end of an era in the United States, but it sends a signal to the rest of the world, and especially the Anglosphere, which has most shamelessly copied the progressive pieties in the U.S. And the signal is, you know, this stuff is tired and it's not popular. And you know, so one of the ironies of the you know, the tyrannies of the progressive movement is that they don't represent the majority. If you look at that electoral map in the United States on Wednesday, it was a visual representation of how unpopular the woke perspective on the world is. And it is one of the things that won Trump the election.
However, of course, the publishing industry is very much on the woke side of all of this. So can I ask you on a personal level, I mean, you never shy away from the darker side of humanity in your novels. You've always done this and you haven't stopped doing that. So why is it that you can do this? I mean, have you had sensitivity readers breathing down your neck? Have you had publishers attempt to intervene when it comes to your own fiction?
No one has ever had the nerve to subject me to a sensitivity reader. And if other authors were just also stroppy and said no, and are you kidding me? And you know where you can shove your sensitivity reader, then we wouldn't have them. So, you know, I would just like to see my colleagues be a little ballsier.
Absolutely. I think that's a great message to end on. Lionel Shriver, thank you ever so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
And next on Free Speech Nation, historian David Oldroyd Bolt will be rounding up this week's news in the arts and culture. So please do not go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been another cloudy day for many of us, but there is some bluer skies and some brighter weather on the horizon as we head into the new working week. We do still have a weather front to contend with through the rest of today, though, continuing to slip its way southwards across the UK through the end of the weekend. And then it's this area of high pressure developing out towards the west that brings us those sunnier skies into next week. So this weather front out in the south of the UK continues to sink its way southwards, still bringing some cloudy skies and some outbreaks of rain to the southern portion of the UK overnight and into the early hours of Monday morning. But further north, a different story. Plenty of clear spells and turning quite chilly under those clear spells too. We could see temperatures dropping into the low single figures, but generally staying that little bit milder under that cloud in the very far south of the UK. And that does mean quite a cloudy and damp start, particularly for southwestern parts of England through Monday morning, with some outbreaks of rain and drizzle across the hills. For the rest of England and Wales, though, generally a dry and bright start to the morning. For Northern Ireland, still staying dry, but perhaps a bit of mist and fog around to start first thing. And for Scotland, also a dry and bright start to the morning, although maybe one or two isolated showers across parts of Shetland and Orkney first thing. So generally staying dry and bright through much of Monday morning, plenty of sunshine on offer. That weather front does eventually sink its way southwards across the southwest of the UK, so plenty of sunshine across the board as we head in towards Monday afternoon. There might be one or two isolated showers just across eastern parts of England, but these generally quite light and quite scattered. And despite temperatures being round about average for the time of year, it will be feeling pleasant in any of that sunshine. The sunshine continues through the rest of Monday and staying dry and clear overnight. So that does mean quite a chilly start for most of us on Tuesday morning, maybe some mist and fog around, but otherwise another dry day across the board. Plenty of sunny spells on offer. Maybe one or two isolated showers still clipping across the very far southeast, but there should be more sunshine on the way as we head through Wednesday and Thursday as well. And temperatures will generally be staying around about average, but definitely feeling pleasant in the sunshine.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home? Talking about? Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy. Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. It's time now for our Arts and Culture Roundup. I'm delighted to be joined by the historian and broadcaster David Oldroyd Bolt. David, welcome. So what has been exciting you in the world of arts this week?
I'm not sure exciting is the word, but certainly of note was the death on the 3rd of November of one of the most consequential figures in 20th century music, Quincy Jones. He was a producer, he was a trumpeter, he was a band leader, he was a film producer as well as music producer. He's one of the most extraordinary sound engineers of the century, a songwriter, and the man whose arrangement of Fly Me to the Moon was the first piece ever to be played on the moon.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I did not know that. So a lot of people know Quincy Jones from his work with Michael Jackson and particularly
He created Michael Jackson as a solo artist. He wrote the music for The Wiz, which was the black version of The Wizard of Oz in the 70s, which starred Diana Ross and a young Michael Jackson.
As the Scarecrow.
As the Scarecrow. And then he saw that Jackson had potential to be an enormous star and moulded him, did Off the Wall and Thriller, which remains Thriller, the biggest-selling LP of all time, 77 million records sold. And he had this ability, Quincy Jones, just to see around the corner as to what was going to be the next big thing in pop music. In the 50s, he was, as I say, a band leader and trumpeter who became very famous for his arrangements, even as an extremely young man. Count Basie and Miles Davis thought of him as the best arranger in jazz, full stop. And then in the 60s, he saw the potential of melding in funk with jazz and pop. And then through the 70s and 80s, his only blind spot, it could be said, was that he never really appreciated the commercial or popular bite of hip-hop. But by that time, he was well into his 60s, and he was a film producer at this point, most famous probably for The Colour Purple, which ended his marriage and gave him a nervous breakdown.
Oh, crikey. I mean, it's very interesting because I saw recently the documentary about We Are the World, the charity single that was produced in one night under very intense conditions with a lot of egos in the room. And, you know, it's a very mawkish song, but putting it all together and holding the reins was Quincy Jones, and look, you know, dealing with all of those, you know, very difficult celebrities who were tired. They'd just come from an awards ceremony.
I think the point about Jones was always that he was the hardest working man in music. In the 60s, he had 4 brain aneurysms in 1 year while working on albums. He was doing albums and shows and arrangements all at the same time. And it must be said his personal life suffered immensely because of this. His health suffered immensely. But he was the first, he was an extraordinary man, the first black man to be a record producer, record executive at a major label in 1961. I mean, he was only 28.
Yes.
And he just seemed to have the ability to work harder, to work at greater pitch of artistic excellence than anybody else, and as they say, to see the musical trends coming.
Isn't it interesting? Because obviously everyone thinks of Michael Jackson when they think of Thriller, but the production is actually key to the success of that album. We often ignore that whole side of
he again, that sound, that Quincy Jones sound, is quintessentially early 80s to me. It's that big wall of sound, it's that use of synthesizers, which he'd been doing since the early 1970s. When he wrote music for Ironside, the television programme, he used synthesizers in a way that's now become a cliché in, you know, television detective dramas. But he was the first person to come up with that. He was the one who decided on the use of stereo in that way that transition from LP to CD. He, I think, again, saw the potential of the new medium of CD and the amount more information of sound you could get into it.
Very interesting. What else have you been looking at this week?
I think the biggest news this week has been I won't call it a remake, but the reimagining of The Day of the Jackal. The Frederick Forsyth novel of 1971 made into an extremely good and famous film in '73 with Edward Fox, which I think is rightly considered one of the great films.
Well, that's tricky, isn't it? Because the Edward Fox version is so beloved.
It's iconic. I mean,
so
absolutely.
to revisit that is always a risk, isn't it?
Yeah, and it shows the genius of those doing it, that they've managed to do it in such a convincing way. The writer is Ronan Bennett, who's known from, among other things, Top Boy and Public Enemies, and the production team is Carnival Films, which is Nigel Marchant and Gareth Neame. Their most famous work, Downton Abbey, Last Kingdom, The Gilded Age, you know, they are seriously good.
So it's a good pedigree.
Yeah, and what they've done, I think, is extremely good. They've taken Eddie Redmayne and allowed him to, in a way, echo Edward Fox's performance. And there is in the 5th episode a little nugget for those who love the original film. But it's very much his own performance. He brings a really sinister side to it, which I think Redmayne is increasingly becoming good at portrayal of depth and psychology in that way. It's perhaps a little bit PC, no, well, not PC, but woke in the subject that it uses for the assassination. It's a right-wing, rabble-rousing German politician who gets bumped off.
But that's compulsory now.
It's essentially, yeah, this is, and, you know, you might say that some of the casting is perhaps a little Hollywood sensitive.
Yes.
But I think the drama holds up extremely well. The location shooting is gorgeous. And the humour in it is well. There's a particular scene where Redmayne bumps off a policeman and a truck driver, which is just hilarious.
Is that right? Because, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but looking at the advertisements, it looks a bit po-faced.
Yeah, I think that is one problem with it. It comes across as rather grim and self-satisfied, smug, and it's actually not. It's good old-fashioned entertainment.
Now, there was an interesting review in the Telegraph, which was a bit cynical, suggested it looked like a big audition from Eddie Redmayne for the next James Bond. I mean, do you think that's fair?
It'd take Bond down an extremely dark path if that's so. Which I suppose you could say that Daniel Craig forecast or telegraphed.
Yes.
I don't think that it would be so.
And is this isn't the kind of thing I associate with Eddie Redmayne for some reason?
No, it's as I say, more of an action role. Although there are long periods in it where it's straightforward drama.
Yes.
And then you get the occasional burst of extraordinary violence.
Yes.
It's not a sort of shoot 'em up in the manner that Bond was and perhaps will be again after Daniel Craig. I just don't see it. I think frankly, he's too good an actor to be James Bond.
So in terms of the TV series on the streaming services that we can watch at the moment?
So now it's on Now TV and
Now.
Sky. The first 5 episodes are out now, and then the remainder will come over the course of the next week.
And would this be up there with the best that you could see at the moment?
I'd certainly say so.
Rather than The Rings of Power or something nonsense?
Well, it knocks it into a cocked hat. It's a seriously good piece of drama. It's extremely well shot. Budapest does a very good job of standing in for Munich. So I'm sure stag weekends around the country will be saying, I've drunk there. And I just think it's one of those things where you think this is a breath of fresh air. It's good old-fashioned Sunday evening family, well, not maybe family, but entertainment.
Fantastic. Well, David Alderwood-Ball, thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Next, on Free Speech Nation, Donald Trump shows a certain side towards the royal family. We're going to be watching a couple of clips, including some of the meltdowns that have occurred over the last week. Please don't go anywhere.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, let's speak now to Sales Director at Savills for Quinta Properties, Raquel Santos, who is live for us in Portugal. Raquel, good to see you this morning. Why are all these celebrities flocking to Portugal all of a sudden?
Yeah, I guess it's just because of basically the great lifestyle that we have, security, you know. Portugal has kind of been a hidden, tucked away gem for quite a while that people didn't realize existed. And with the international flights that have, with the American flights coming in, it's kind of been put back on the map as a country that's worth visiting and worth investing in due to the secure investments that we offer in real estate.
Raquel, is it anything to do with tax rates? Because I think capital gains tax is, I think if it's over a certain amount, you pay half of your rate, which is 28%. Capital gains on shares and cryptocurrencies is 0. Is it anything to do with that? Because over here in the UK, big storm at the moment about millionaires apparently leaving in exodus because of the mooted increases in taxes in just a few weeks.
Yes, so obviously the alterations that are happening with the UK in terms of the tax that's being implemented on the capital gains, as you mentioned, we've definitely noticed has become a big drive, mostly on the vendor side as well, who are looking to sell because they don't want to be hit, with these higher capital gains, which is close to coming into effect.
Raquel, have you noticed then millionaires, high net worth people from the UK getting in touch with you looking to relocate?
Definitely. It's for multiple reasons, obviously, the changes that are due to come into place, obviously, and Portugal just seems to be a safe option always when things do kind of change. People opt to come into Portugal because we're quite steady, we're quite stable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So it's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what has been going viral this week on social media, not in Bruce's house. So let's start with this clip.
Says this is with Queen Elizabeth. Right here, who was fantastic, by the way. These images, I mean, who has images like this? And these were relationships, too. Look, here's now the king. Here's Charles with the guard. And this is the Queen, Queen Elizabeth. It's a piece of history at the highest level. Look, it's Charles. So beautiful. And they'll see the most beautiful places in the world. There are no places like this.
I know he's doing that thing that people do where they go through photographs and just find the ones they're in. Yeah. And they sort of stop and look at those. But, you know, that would be Trump, wouldn't it? It's a bit of an egoist. Yeah.
No, really?
What do you make of that? I mean, he's pointing out who the Queen is. That's very useful because maybe people don't know. You know, she's not that familiar. And then the King.
Yeah, well, she's not around anymore unless I've been living in a vortex.
No, but neither is Winston Churchill, but you could spot him in a lineup.
Could you?
Yeah.
We go to different bars. Yeah, no, but the thing is, he does have passionate ties to this country, because although he's against...
He's not Scottish, isn't he?
Apparently so.
His mum isn't.
Yeah, his mum... I think
Scottish.
was.
Yeah,
yes.
that's right, OK.
Because I have to laugh at all the people that hate him in Scotland. So he has a resort there, and we have our own discount voucher thing. It's called It Is On. And then they're always posing for afternoon tea because they've got, like, you know, 4 nights for £4. I hate Trump, but I'll stay in this hotel, and you're like, you make me sick.
Have you been to the resort in Scotland?
No. It's near Glasgow, dirty.
What do you make of that video, Paul? I mean, the thing is, one of the reasons I think that Trump came across well in this election is that he was prepared to do those long interviews, like with Joe Rogan and that kind of thing, and he doesn't really have much to hide because he doesn't perform. He just is who he is. So whenever you catch him in these moments, that's just Trump.
I think I'm going to say something that's probably never been said before. That was sweet.
You think?
Was it not kind of sweet? I mean, it was a little bit pathetic as well. But we always get, that's the Queen and that's me, beautiful. Real history here, beautiful. And that was a terrible impression. Right. But it looks sweet to me.
It's humanising.
Yeah, there was OK, so let's compare him to Kamala. She would have just been cackling throughout all of that. If she had done that, she'd be ah!
No, but I think that's my point. I think her problem is that she would always be thinking, what am I meant to say? What would my PA tell me I should be saying? So the authenticity... I mean, I think that's also why she refused to do Joe Rogan, because she sat in a room for 3 hours. You can't perform for that length of time.
Yeah, I mean, we probably shouldn't have the President of the United States based on how well he can identify the royal family in a photograph.
No, we definitely should not, no.
But to me, it seemed relatively endearing. I wasn't sure who he was explaining to.
No.
Obviously an alien, because he didn't seem to know anything.
He didn't know the obscure ones, did he? He didn't know.
But then do we?
We know the Princess Anne's of the world.
But she's not obscure. Oh, come on. I take great offence to that. Princess Michael of Kent, I take issue with. But did you know, and this is interesting, and you can have this for free, part of Joan Collins' Alexis was based on Donald Trump. Hashtag just saying.
Is that right?
Totes.
Unbelievable. OK, well, let's move on now. We've got another clip. This one's been going viral. Let's have a look.
Yeah, they want to know. Sugar Plum, Snowball, come in.
Shall we? How do I look?
Slaying.
Maya?
Fabulous.
Really? She'll love that.
Robin.
Oh, that's very them. Next. Marvellous.
Incoming.
Good. This one's mine.
We're out of bows.
We are never out of bows. Last one. You thought it was all him.
So that's the Boots advert there. We've given them some free airtime there. You know, the reason why people are annoyed about this, why it's gone a bit viral, is apparently that actor, no one knows her name, but she's the one who said that the image of the royal family on the balcony was too white, I believe that was...
I owe her a gratitude, actually. I was writing for the Portsmouth Evening News when she said that.
What's her name, then?
I don't know her name
No one knows. No one knows her name.
And I wrote a story about that, saying if you flip that around, it'd be racist. And the editor said to me that a white man that looked like me shouldn't write about a black woman that looks like her.
Right.
So I've got to write another story. So I did. I wrote a story about how the editor said that I was racist.
Right.
And he wouldn't publish it, but Constantine Kissing did.
Right.
They sacked me, and I came on GBNews.
Oh, that's how it works. do like to hoover up the dregs. What do you think?
Don't you look at me. I like to hoover up the dregs as well.
Yeah, I know. Very different.
Waste not, want not.
OK, let's not go into that area. Tell me what you thought of that advert.
What colour was Santa?
Oh, I couldn't tell.
That was the thing, because she did say that she found the balcony disappointingly white.
Yes.
But then I would have thought she would have been even more offended if they tried to balance the colour books, if that is an option.
No, that's true. I mean, she should check out the elves. Has she been to Lapland? It's like an ethno-state.
My friend works for the call centre for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a thing. Is it Ascot?
Is that, yeah?
Yeah.
Is Santa racist? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Someone said yes at the back, so we're going to go with that. Let's have a look at this video now. Let's move on. It's a beautiful piece of performance art. But this is obviously a young gentleman who is a bit... well, he's not pleased with the result of the US election, and he wanted to express that in his own way.
Entirely contrived, by the way.
You think, yeah.
Well, he placed the camera down, make sure he was in shot, and then had a mental breakdown.
Yeah, it's not real.
4 likes, by the way, because why would you do that? There will be employers out there that will look at that and think, I'll probably employ you, actually.
Yeah, there is something quite interesting about this whole generation, this idea of TikTok and the way that it's very, very performative, and none of the emotion is really authentic. This is, you know, I'll give you a good example of this. If you remember back in the day, Sinead O'Connor had her video Nothing Compares to You, where she's crying, authentically crying in the video. It's a close-up of her face. And she said at the time she was thinking about a real thing that had happened to her. The emotion was authentic. Miley Cyrus tried to do a version of this where she does a performance where she's crying. It's not real, and you can see it's not real. But I think that's very much of the generation, that it's not really about emotion or genuinely feeling emotion. It's about performing emotion. Is that just me being an old...
No, it's attention-seeking, and that person looked like an out-of-work harlequin.
Yeah.
Maybe they were crying and upset because they'd seen what they'd done to their hair and put on for that day. I don't know.
It could be that. But I don't think he was upset. That's my point. I think he was performing for a TikTok video.
Oh, no, completely. He's a bampot, honestly. I'd take a hammer to him. They'd have said it. But... wink, wink, I would. But this all comes from... Do you remember Leave Britney Alone? And there was that guy who originally went viral, and he was upset because Britney was having a hard time. That man doesn't give a hoo-ha, a rat's hoo-ha.
No, I remember that one. So these videos do go viral when people start screaming and crying. You know, we should do that more on this show.
Oh, man.
I think.
Why don't we?
Well, can you? I don't know if you've got that...
You've got the camera.
Look, I've got the ability to do that, but I've got the acting chops.
Yeah, and I've just got chops.
And you... Well, there's something to be said for chops.
Yes,
but why is it, though, do you think... I mean, I want to get to the heart of it. Why is it that these kind of videos, where the most histrionic, those are the things that get shared, rather than, you know, a sensible discussion about the outcome, which we've had tonight? That's not going to get 1 million views.
No, of course, because there's no greater commodity in today's society than being a victim.
Yeah.
So that person there is totally unaffected by Trump being president, totally unaffected. However, they're portraying themselves as the victim, 4 likes on social media, and that is exactly how they exist. That is the cycle of their whole day.
We never report on the planes that land safely. I'm just leaving it there.
Oh, profound. Bruce is here for the profundity. That's why we hire him. Let's have a look. Fine, have we got another one? No, we've got some unfiltered dilemmas, though. So the first dilemma came in from Jessica. Jessica has written the following. She says, my co-worker is a big gossip and shares everything. Recently, when one of our colleagues didn't disclose his illness, she asked her daughter, who works at the hospital and has access to patient records, to look up his medical information. Her daughter did, and she shared the details with us. Should I report this to HR? No, you should report it to the police.
Yeah.
I believe that is violating the Data Protection Act.
Yeah, report her to the police and report her to HR and report her to the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, report her.
Yeah, and take a hammer to her.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Get Emily Thornbury round. She'll have your leg off.
Oh, she absolutely would. Terrifying. She's like Annie Wilkes.
Yeah, absolutely.
If people don't know that, it's the woman in misery who... Anyway, what do you think of
Well, it's a crime, isn't it? Who does that? What state of mind?
This woman, Jessica's co-worker. Jessica, like she
What a trollop.
But surely the people who are looking working in hospitals with hospital records, they're going to be a bit more careful about that, aren't they?
Absolutely. And what's HR anyway? Is that human remains?
Human resource. It's interesting. My mother used to work at the A&E department in Derry, and there was a woman who worked there who was a militant unionist. And anytime she went through the patient's records, and anytime someone would put Derry as their address, she changed it to Londonderry. And she was...
Wow.
And she got in a lot of trouble for that.
She's a lovely woman, your mother.
You've met my mother?
I have. She's wonderful.
She is a lovely woman. There we go. I don't know why we've got onto that. Let's move on to the next dilemma. This one comes in from Ben, and Ben says, I'm a bit of a shopaholic and have accumulated credit card debt that I've hidden from my partner. It hasn't been an issue until now, but we're applying for a mortgage, so I'll have to disclose it. How should I handle this? Honesty within a relationship, Bruce.
Well,
it's important.
I know you expect me to be silly and all that. He has to say something.
You think?
Because if his credit rating is bad, he's going to have to explain as to why it's bad. That's the whole thing. So I don't think he should really overthink it. He's got himself into this mess with his QVC Easy Pay statements and Klarna. And I think he's just going to have to say, look, I'm a financial mess.
Yeah, it is an addiction, right? I mean...
Yeah, well, it's the dopamine thing.
Yeah, that's
I did that during lockdown. I used to go on Mr. Porter.
What's that?
It's a really high... I can't believe I'm saying... Anyway, so what I used to do, right, was when I had the dog, I used to lay out towels and I used to order Christian Louboutin platforms that I couldn't afford, right? And I would drink bottles of champagne, wear them in the house on the towels and send them back so I could get the high from shopping.
Right, I'm understanding a bit more about your psychology now. I mean...
There was a full-on mental breakdown.
Yeah. Because my niece was living with me at the time. She went, why are all these... I went, shh, just stop.
Bruce, I hope you've been seeking help for this. This is
I don't do it anymore.
OK, good. You're
and
over
I cleared
that
that credit card.
Wow.
Those shoes are really overpriced.
This has become far too confessional for my liking. Let's move on to a dilemma from Sarah. Sarah says, my neighbour has a cat, but they don't take good care of him. For the past few weeks, I've been feeding and looking after him. I'd like to keep him, but I feel guilty about it. What should I do? Kidnap the cat.
Yeah.
Like, if the cat... I mean that. If the cat is being mistreated, take it.
Yeah.
It's better for the cat. And by the way, no one owns a cat anyway.
Exactly.
If a cat doesn't like the way it's being treated, it will leave. So you won't be kidnapping it, you'll just be inviting it in as a guest. Am I right?
Absolutely, you are right. That cat will go wherever the food is.
Yeah.
And it will take the snuggles and the scruffles and the ruffles
I also
that come
hate
with
people
it.
who mistreat animals.
Oh,
I think
man.
they're scum of the earth.
Absolutely.
So your neighbours are scum.
Yeah.
Take their cat.
Yeah.
And don't feel bad about it either.
Yeah.
What do you think, Bruce?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. No, I'm worried you're going to tell us another psychologically disturbing story. We've got another quick dilemma from Liam. Liam has said, I was planning a guy's trip to America. Yeah, lads.
Whoa.
However, some of my group don't want to visit America because Trump has been elected. How do I tell them they're being ridiculous while maintaining the friendship? That's absolutely right, you know, because you have to shake hands with Trump when you enter America. Absolutely. Your friends are idiots. Ditch the idiots, get better friends, and the problem goes away. I don't see why that's such a big deal.
I concur.
I'm sounding quite militant now, but you've shocked me with your story about the high-heeled shoes and the champagne, you know?
Oh, right, OK.
It's worried me.
Weirdly, though, it's exactly how I imagine Bruce to be at home.
Is that right? Actually, it does. It's disturbing, but it also makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think of that, Paul?
Oh, idiotic.
Idiotic, absolutely.
It is absolutely idiotic. I mean, I don't believe in cancel culture.
Sure.
But for this...
You think cancel him?
Cancel your friends, absolutely.
No, they're just not good friends. They're not interesting people.
No, of course they're not.
It's just it's a load of rubbish. It's like all these people, not my president. Fine, well, it's not your country. Leave the country.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you know, they play by the rules. It's a bit like when they don't get the winner in Strictly, not my champion. Oh, grow up.
Absolutely. Well, look, we haven't got much time now, unfortunately, but thank you so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. Thanks ever so much to my wonderful panel, Paul Cox and Bruce Devlin, to all of my brilliant guests this evening. And by the way, if you want to join us live in the studio, dead easy, just go to sroaudiences.com. You can apply there. Come along. Stay tuned, by the way, because the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight is coming up in just 1 second. Don't forget also that Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock. That is the late-night paper preview show where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. And if you're lucky, Bruce Devlin will turn up to tell you how good the Steps musical is, which was previewed in Birmingham last night. He can't stop going on about it. I'm still quite sceptical, to be honest, but you say it's good, so maybe we'll have a look at that next week. Thanks ever so much for watching Free Speech Nation. I'll see you next week.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's been another cloudy day for many of us, but there is some bluer skies and some brighter weather on the horizon as we head into the new working week. We do still have a weather front to contend with through the rest of today, though, continuing to slip its way southwards across the UK through the end of the weekend. And then it's this area of high pressure developing out towards the west that brings us those sunnier skies into next week. So this weather front out in the south of the UK continues to sink its way southwards, still bringing some cloudy skies and some outbreaks of rain to the southern portion of the UK overnight and into the early hours of Monday morning. But further north, a different story. Plenty of clear spells and turning quite chilly under those clear spells too. We could see temperatures dropping into the low single figures, but generally staying that little bit milder under that cloud in the very far south of the UK. And that does mean quite a cloudy and damp start, particularly for southwestern parts of England through Monday morning, with some outbreaks of rain and drizzle across the hills. For the rest of England and Wales, though, generally a dry and bright start to the morning. For Northern Ireland, still staying dry, but perhaps a bit of mist and fog around to start first thing. And for Scotland, also a dry and bright start to the morning, although maybe one or two isolated showers across parts of Shetland and Orkney first thing. So generally staying dry and bright through much of Monday morning, plenty of sunshine on offer. That weather front does eventually sink its way southwards across the southwest of the UK, so plenty of sunshine across